Start the zoom out and zoom in for the first game. Now, before we start, let us know who you got and maybe even tell us why, as number 7 LSU heads over to Oxford, Mississippi to take on number 9 Ole Miss. Both teams go into this matchup undefeated, as Ole Miss has won 2 conference games in SEC play already. My voice is already cracking. LSU has beaten Florida to get their first conference win of the season. Very, very interesting, as the 114th Magnolia Bowl is almost upon us. -1.5 favorites is the Rebels at the moment, setting the line earlier this week at -2.5, so that has gone down. If you're dabbling, I would definitely stay away from this game because a lot can happen, and it should be pretty much up in the air of a 50-50 coin toss. Head coach Brian Kelly last week got another win to go 4-0, 56-7 against Southeastern Louisiana. Has already beaten Florida 20-10. The week before that, it was a 23-7 victory over Louisiana Tech. And then obviously opening up the season against Clemson 14-10. We're seeing a lot of 10s there. And yeah, not much scoring for the LSU Tigers opponents. For Lane Kiffin, again 4-0, 45-10, a whopping of Tulane. We also previewed that game along with the Kentucky one, where the Ole Miss Rebels won 30-23 to open up again the Southeastern Conference with a 1-0 start. And then they got their second win already here with a 41-35 win against Arkansas, also at home. So pretty good form so far, defending their home turf. I've already proven that they can go on the road, get a nice conference win there in Lexington. And it's the third time already. I wouldn't have expected this as our preview series so far this season. This is the team we have been covering the most, because I think they've had the most also interesting matchups so far going into 2025. As you know, week 1's results and week 2's results come in. We've been talking a lot of Rebel football here on the channel. But we have the interesting situation. We'll start with Ole Miss, because we were writing the question to start off this week: who is starting at quarterback going forward for the Rebels? It's already been announced that Trinidad Chablis is going to be Lane Kiffin's guy moving forward again. He will make his 3rd consecutive start for Ole Miss. Last week, he went 17 for 27, 307 yards, a completion percentage of 63, 2 passing touchdowns with 14 carries for 114 yards. Yes, he is very disgusting with his legs, averaging 8 yards per carry. One big, beautiful stat, and it is a goose egg, and that's the amount of interceptions this guy throws, and that's 0 so far in his first 2 starts. Definitely outmatching now the backup quarterback for the Rebels, Austin Simmons. He threw 4 already in his first 2 starts. And Chablis, who won a national championship last season with Ferris State in, I believe that's Division II football. I'm not saying it here first, but man, he's looking like he might want to be competing for another one here in 2025, but for, again, the Rebels. He will be something that we are going to keep an eye on. I'm not too sure if he has enough time or enough games to make a case for the Heisman, but boy, I will not be surprised if he continues this form and is the starter and stays healthy throughout here in this season. Come December, this young man might be a finalist, not only for that award, but others as I believe I saw him already on some watch lists with his past 2 weeks of outperforming a lot of quarterbacks. But then there's the other one to talk about, you guys. That is this guy over here, Garrett Nussmeier. Which is kind of a bummer because I believe the LSU win, now that we are farther away from week 1, seems less legit of a dub on the road against, again, the Clemson Tigers. You don't like to say that because of how good he played in that game and kept it as best he could going. They didn't score a single point, if I'm not mistaken, against Clemson. And in that second half, they had all 17 points to allow LSU to win there on the road. His stats so far, again, in that game was 28 for 38, throwing it quite a bit. We are well familiar with that. If you tuned into our preseason videos, we talked a lot about this young man and how he loves to sling it for his Tigers. 1 passing touchdown, 0 interceptions against Clemson again. So far this season, he has a 68.6 pass completion rate. That's not too bad, especially the amount of volume he puts out through the air. 962 yards passing. He's averaging 240.5 per game, which is, I think, decent. Especially if he wants to go to the next level and continue that kind of rate. That's going to be some good stuff. 6 passing touchdowns. He's only been sacked 6 times and has only 2 interceptions, one against Louisiana Tech and the other against Florida, which is not too bad because Clemson had a pretty good defense, to be quite honest with you. But one thing that I've also been noticing is the third down conversion rate. LSU is 56 in the country with a 41.86% chance of converting on third down. Now, that might be where they're kind of struggling and not outscoring their opponents as expected. You know, against Louisiana Tech, be a little bit more lethal against Clemson and Florida. If they can improve that, especially coming up against an Ole Miss team that's pretty decent there in the secondary. And then another thing to mention from this and why maybe the Tigers offense has been struggling with a good quarterback in Garrett Nussmeier. They're 98th in the nation with their run offense, averaging 112.7 yards per game. That needs to improve. That's another talking point that we are repeating from our preseason videos. It's going to be also unfortunate going into this matchup, as we'll talk about that more in the injury section. Again, more things to mention. Ole Miss is 10th in allowing their opponent's average passer rating to be 99.8. That's pretty good, well below average. You kind of want to be more in the 150 range. And they're doing a great job in not allowing any of their opponents' quarterbacks to be very efficient. But guess who's right behind them in at 11th? That is, yes, the LSU Tigers, with the 100.1 number set there. And again, we did say this is the year of the defense, and the LSU team that we thought was going to be mostly offense is actually turning out to be more of a defensive juggernaut. And it's a juggernaut that we're going to see on both sides of the ball, as it's going to definitely challenge either team. I think Ole Miss has kind of gotten through maybe more on paper in terms of quality of opponents. You have Arkansas, Tulane, Kentucky, and unfortunately, when you think about it, LSU just really has Florida and Clemson. Louisiana Tech has been playing some decent football, but that's something or an opponent that LSU should be squashing, 10 out of 10 times. And then there's another thing to mention. Kind of a weird time of possession stat that I saw in terms of percentage of time of possession again. Ole Miss is 110th in the country. That is crazy. With the amount of, winning they have been doing without scoring their opponents by 26 points on average, and actually a total of 104 points of outscoring everyone they've come up against. That's just nuts. But yeah, that's something I think I really want to pay attention to, because they don't need to have the ball for very much of any kind of time, really. And I think I might have put LSU stat there, 34th, I believe, with 53.48% time of possession in terms of percentage. So we might see maybe a shootout, to be quite honest with you. But the way the defenses are playing so far this year, that kind of doesn't show us a sign that that's going to actually happen. We might see the defenses shut out the offense, and it's going to be key drives in this one here in Oxford, Mississippi. This game comes down to which offense will be more efficient than the other. Some other stats I want to bring up in being efficient by protecting the ball. LSU has fumbled the ball 1.3 times per game. That is 94th in the country. Not the best, not the best. And for interceptions per game, that's 0.7, which puts them at 56. But that's not too bad of a stat, again, for the amount that they throw it. Mississippi fumbles the ball about 0.5 times per game and have an interception per game rate of 1. That's 81st in the country. But also, they're going into a game with a quarterback that hasn't thrown one. Most of that has been, again, made up by Austin Simmons, who's now not the starter for, again, the Rebels. Injuries to bring up. And this is kind of a big one if he's not 100%. And that's starting with LSU. Caden Durham, their key running back, is questionable and has an undisclosed injury. That's going to be a big hole if, again, he's not at 100%. Not only in the running game, but for checkdowns, pass play designs to get him the ball in multiple different ways. Screens, wheel routes, where everything's being flooded over to one zone and he's in the open area. That's going to be, again, a big hole. Another guy that might not be 100%, and I was kind of bummed to hear about this, is tight end Trayvon Green. He's questionable with a knee injury. He had a big touchdown against Clemson in the red zone. If he's not ready to go, that is going to be another big target missing. Again, when LSU is within striking distance, or again at the 20 or less yard line of their opponents. If they don't have that big body, where does Garrett Nussmeier go with the ball? For Ole Miss, it's a bit of the same from last week when we talked about their injuries. Jalen Braxton, they transferred from Arkansas. He's questionable with an undisclosed injury and also hasn't registered anything in the stats, but that's just depth that they won't have. And then same thing at the wide receiver position. Traylon Ray, he's a transfer in from West Virginia. Questionable and undisclosed injury for him. We are going with the Rebels in this one. I was a bit surprised to see that they were favorites in the start of the week. That is starting to fall. Maybe it will change by the time of kickoff or the day before, because we are live here on Wednesday. So there's a lot of changing for people actually putting money on this game. And it's also a good indicator of what people are actually expecting to see the outcome. We will have a one possession difference. So we'll actually give you even a score here. 31-24 Ole Miss. That's 7 points. Very similar to the last two matchups these guys went at it. In 2024 last year, 29-26 overtime win for LSU there in Baton Rouge. And last time this one occurred in Oxford, Mississippi, 2023, 55-49 Rebels win there. And this kind of back and forth goes back at least 2 more years. And that's also why we're kind of going with Ole Miss. Lane Kiffin has done an excellent job in defending his home turf against the LSU Tigers. And the big difference maker, Trinidad Chablis, will truly arrive with getting Ole Miss another win at home and going 3-0, maybe an SEC play. We'll have to see. Again, we're going with Ole Miss as their favorites. Before we move on, if you're an LSU or Ole Miss fan, hit that thumbs up button. And also let us know on who are you going with in here, and maybe even tell us why. As we zoom out.